your presence is here with us. For wherever we have 2 or 3 gathered in your name, you promise to be in our midst and to bless and to do good to us. We are more than 3 or 2, and so we await your blessings. We know wherever you are, all is well, and you are in your sanctuary today, not only here, but in churches around the world. So bless your people. Bless all those who are participating in one means or the other, in one ministry or the other, to bring glory and honor to your name. We thank you. Above all, we want you to circle those who are sick and our prayer list and other prayer lists, that so many prayers are coming up before you, oh God, that you will be mindful of your children and bless according to your will. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, our lesson this morning is on the stranger in your gates. The stranger in your gates. And I must give you a little warning that the lesson itself is a little radical in concept, and it can be possibly a little disturbing, but it is God's words, and we have to listen and take heed, because whatever God says to the Israelites of the past, he's also saying to us today. So we want to keep that in mind. And here, the stranger in your gates. If you take a look at the picture, you will see different things happening. The artist is capturing some different things. You see one person walking away with a bit of clothing. Somebody gave that clothing to that individual. You see a lady sitting down there begging, asking for some monies, and she is reaching in her purse to give $1 or $2. You look over here, is another gentleman with a little child putting on a warm coat, and it could be a winter time. And over on the last side, you see a lady in need and someone giving some morsels of food. And we have seen it all around us. And we're going back now to church history. We're now going back to biblical history. But keep in mind for this lesson, it is not about the history of Deuteronomy. It is about the lesson of us also today. So he says, after giving that long speech about the commandment, Moses on top of that rock looking over and seeing the promised land, Moses said to the children, therefore, you have now received the law. Therefore, I'm giving you my last speech. And he said, therefore, love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And I want to repeat this text several times. Why Moses had to tell them, remind them that they were strangers? And why did he have to say, you were strangers in Egypt? The fact is that they were also uncomfortable with the strangers around them. You see that? They were uncomfortable with the strangers around them because they had gotten to the point where now they were independent, and then we are the chosen people. And so he says, therefore love. And I like this. He did not say, therefore like the strangers. He did not say, pray for the strangers. He did not say, give a Bible study to the strangers. Tell them about the law. What did he say? Love. Because love is capturing so many things. Love covers all. And he said, love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And here we look now at, it says Jesus was asked about the most important commandment of the law. So here the scribe came to Jesus, Lord, what is the most important commandment of the law? I want you to bear in mind also, when the scribes and Pharisees ask a question about the law, they are not only talking about the law that Moses gave them, the 10 Decalogue. No, they were talking about, when you mentioned the laws and the prophets, they were talking about the 5 books of Moses. The 5 books of Moses were considered the laws and the prophets. And so they said, of all of those laws that are in the 5 books of Moses, the Septuagint, then which one is the most important? And Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart. And you see what happens right there? It is in Mark and it is in Deuteronomy. And then the second commandment is love your neighbor as yourself. It is in Mark and it is in Leviticus. You see, so the same message that God was passing on to the Israelites, the same message he's passing on to us, because we are living in the times of the New Testament. See, and he says, but look at this. He says to love your neighbor, but also to love the stranger. So yeah, scripture then, as well as Moses, was putting a distinction between the neighbor and the stranger. So your neighbor is somebody next door, but a stranger is a different thing. So we're going to take a look here. And we are dealing with 7 things there that we're going to look at this morning. It says, who were the strangers in the gates? And I could not find a picture of what a stranger looked like then, but I found a picture of what strangers look like today. And they are right there before you. And you have seen them from time to time. It says, you will not find the term refugee in the Bible. But the Bible has plenty to say about people called strangers, foreigners, sojourners, and even some Bible translation use the word aliens. Now, the book of Deuteronomy has the most occurrences of the Hebrew word ger, meaning stranger. 22 times Deuteronomy mentioned that. The stranger refers to anyone who was from another ethnic group, but live among the tribes of Israel. Remember when they were coming out of Egypt, what happened? Another group came, the Egyptians came. And you remember at one time when they were complaining, they were saying, oh, these Egyptians that followed us, who were strangers to us, they were the ones who corrupted you. And so you want to go back to eat the meat of Egypt. So there was a significant group of Egyptians who were with them. You see? And so here it is then, they were of different ethnicity. It says, often the reason was that such person came to find refuge because of hardship, famine, the war, or strangers brought into the land as slaves. Now, I'm not going to ask you the question, and I'm not going to insult your intelligence. But the thing is, have you heard about hardship? Have you seen hardship around you in America, the richest country on the planet? Have you seen where, although we're the richest country on earth, so many people are going hungry, famine, Famine in a land of plenty. Can you imagine that? Famine in a land of plenty. And then, have you heard about war? You have to just turn on your TV and so many hundreds of channels, and you can't come across it where we just ended the longest war in the history of America. And wherever divisions are, the same thing happens. And bloodshed is taking place even now. And millions are homeless and dying, or the stranger was brought in. So here is the question I have for you. Start out with a question. Why so many Christians talk and preach about the attributes of God, his love, his mercy, his righteousness, his kindness, and all of that, but do not talk about justice, the justice of God? Why? Can anyone try to give me an answer? Try to let us see why that is happening, why it makes us uncomfortable as a church, as individuals, whether we are on one side of the spectrum or not. Why it makes us uncomfortable? We talk about the justice of God. Oh, when last have you heard a sermon preach on the justice of God? Because we come to the point where God is lovely, God is kind, God is great, and I love my God because he's full of love and righteous, all of those. But there is something that God talks about, justice. And that is what we are going to look at. It's because these things make us a little uncomfortable from time to time. And you know, like a preacher myself, sometimes I preach some disturbing sermons, and before I walk off the platform or right at the church door, somebody is ready to reprimand me. Pastor, you know, Pastor, you know, yeah. And then when I was like internship or so forth, they would call the senior pastor, talk to that young man, you know, he just young man just coming out of college, you know, and they said he's green as grass, green around the ears, you know, all of those things. Yeah, but sometimes you have to say, you have to preach. And that is why we are going to take a second look at it this morning. Who are the strangers in our gates? It says, one who oppresses the poor insults their what? Their maker. But anyone who is kind to the needy honors what? Honors him. I tell you, when I came across this text, I was excited. So I had to put it in blue. The wise man Solomon says, if we then insult the poor, we insult God, our maker. But in other words, but who is kind to the needy around us, what? Honors him. God is pleased. God is honored when you give $1 here or $1 there or 50 cents here or a can here of food or whatever you do. God is pleased, because when the poor cries out to God, we are the angels that God put in place to answer God's prayer. And so he said, we use many different terms today for what the Bible calls strangers, foreigners, and sojourners. I am listing here a few sophisticated, politically correct terminologies. And look at them. Displaced peoples. That sounds very nice, eh? Very nice, very polite. Refugees, migrants, immigrants, asylum seekers, stateless persons, and visitors. And these are nice, sophisticated terms. And you look at the pictures, we can see them all around us. You can see a picture of America right there. and they are in every place in America. The strangers could be in your backyard. They could be your neighbors. They could be in the church. They are in the schools. They are everywhere. They are also on the streets, everywhere around the world. You cannot, those of you who travel a lot and other foreign countries, you cannot go to any foreign country in the world, anywhere, and you do not have individuals are also in need, begging. And you said, what happened? What happened? So the strangers are just like that we have in our midst. The strangers in your gates. Let us take a closer look at Mark chapter 12 and verse 30 to 31. When asked by the scribe, remember the scribes now were the educated ones. The scribes were the ones who can recite the entire Bible and all of those. The scribes were the ones who learned it and all of that. But they were also very tricky individuals in Jesus' time. Everywhere Jesus went, a scribe was there to see him slip up. Oh, and so one of these bright scholars says, Master, the first commandment. What about the first commandment of all? And in Mark 12 and verse 28 says, Jesus answered by giving the affirmation of God as one. Love the Lord your God with all your hearts and with all your soul, with all your might and with all your strength. There's a oneness in God. But look at that. This is the first commandment, Jesus says. However, Jesus did not stop there. He continued his sentence. And he said, and the second is like it. You shall what? Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other greater commandment, no other commandment greater than these. Jesus says, put away every other commandment. Put away every commandment in the 10 items on the Decalogue. Put them away. None of them is greater than this one. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. After you love God. No, you see, we have the faces of them. These are faces of those who are so glad to become Americans. Everywhere around the world is a touchy item in terms of across Europe, across America, across Asia and other places. People are saying, stay where you are. Do not come over into our territory. And we will have wire fences, and we will have barbed wires, we will have gates, we will have all of these things, concrete fences, everything. Stay where you are. It was not something that the Israelites did not have also. Every Israelite, put it away. Every ancient city had walls around them. Why? Because there was always war. They always come to destroy them. So the Israelites nonetheless, they would have walls around them, and they would have the entrance gates. Individuals would come out of the gates, and that is where they would have their market. But they would go inside their gates, and that is where, at the gates, that is where those who are in need would find out. Jesus linked love for God and love for one's neighbor into one commandment. One commandment. And that commandment was the greatest of all. Love for God and the love for your neighbor. That then is telling us, what do you deduct from it then? That Jesus linked love your neighbor, love God and love your neighbor into one commandment. What is that telling you? Break it down a little. The question is, can you love God without loving your neighbor? Isn't that what it is saying? Or isn't it also, can you not love your neighbor, but love God? No, because it is one commandment. He said, there is nothing greater than this. Jesus was not coming up with something new, something that the Jews had not heard before. Because remember, this speech that Moses was giving was a reminder. That was a reminder. It said, the call to love him supremely, the idea of loving one's neighbor and of loving another person as a way of expressing our love for God, yes, was taken from Deuteronomy. So you see all individuals, a picture surrounding Jesus. I want you to take a look now at the picture at the bottom of the slide. Over here to your right. All right, I want to make sure I get this right. To your right. Look at what that picture is telling you in the context of what we are looking at now. What does text is telling you? It is telling us that there are two parts to the commandment, right? 10 commandments. The first part is love to whom? Love to God. And the second half is what? Love to your fellow men. Love to your neighbors. Love to humanity. That's what it is saying. You see, that picture is telling you that Jesus right here is showing love and is accepting love. Over here, this picture is showing what happened. Where here is the Good Samaritan picking up a stranger that he should not even touch, where the priests and others could not even come close by. And he was saying, if I do not help this man, what will happen to him? The priests and the others did not mind. So this is then love to your fellow man and around you. But rather, it will be love and grace. Look at this. It says, when we are committed to Jesus, our Creator, it is not our political affiliation or unsubstantiated ideas or biases that will determine who or how we help the less fortunate among us. These are not the things that we should allow to bias our minds and our thoughts, as credible as they might sound, but to go out and help the neighbor, to go out and help somebody who is begging, to go out and see certain things, and you stop from what you're doing to give a helping hand, to make a conscious effort, because all of us have these good ideas in our minds, but at the end of the day, we do nothing, and years pass and months pass. But it is rather the love and grace and mercy in us springs forth from our Creator Jesus Christ that will give us that impetus to help in before we pass on to the next life. No, that is bad theology. You might misread me. Before we go into the waiting, into the long sleep before our Maker returns, we need to find the joy in our hearts of what that is like to make a difference in somebody's life. I would not be here today if somebody did not help me. I would not be here today if when I went to Canada, not knowing anybody, no relative, nothing, the pastor found an elderly couple, retired couple, and said, there's this young man coming from Jamaica, want to work his way to go to Andrews University. And that elderly couple, they had nothing, but they put me in their basement. All they could give me each day is a fresh baked and sometimes boiled potato. and with some butter. And a Sabbath, we'll have a little protein and so forth. And I had nothing, absolutely nothing, only with ambition. And I can remember those two distinct, and another family at another time did the same thing again. And I tell you, when I get to heaven, you can go look for Jesus, which is fine. I'm not going to, I don't want to, for you to misunderstand what I'm saying, but I want to find those two couples because they have to be, and they have to be in heaven. They never charged me anything. And when I decided, because it was snowing, I never know what snow was like. And when it was snowing and I could not canvas anymore, I went out to reap potatoes. Man, that was the hardest thing, to reap potatoes. I couldn't even buy enough gas. I had to give away my old car, and they gave me money to take the Greyhound and said, this is your fare to go to New York, to find some work and work your way through that. I have to find them in heaven and give them thanks and give them a hug and tell them what God has done for me. There is no other joy that you can have is but when you are able to reach out and help someone that they are surprised. And that is why I asked the question down there. Why did Jesus say there is no commandment greater than these? Because it is wrapped up in love. It's wrapped up in mercy, in goodness, and in grace. That is it. Let me hear from you. Give me your reaction. Give me your reaction. This is what the law is all about. And this is what Christianity is all about. And what Jesus says. It says over here, Moses declares, indeed, heaven and the highest heavens belong to the Lord your God, also the earth with all that is in it. So Moses is telling the children of Israel, God has everything. He has everything. Yes, Yahweh is the God of gods and Lord of lords, the sovereign ruler, the sustainer of the creation. But the question is, which is true? God has all of this. Then why do we have the poor? Then why do we have the neglected? Then why do we have the foreigners? Because this is a paradox. God should be able to provide for all of them then. Huh? Why then? He also cares about the fatherless, the widow, and the strangers. And he shows that care by ministering to their what? Immediate physical needs. And Jesus is saying, you see a picture of Jesus and that older lady there, Jesus reaching out to help. But I like here in Deuteronomy chapter 15 and verse 11, that text, this is going to come back. It says, there will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be what? Open-handed, to be open-handed towards your brothers and towards the poor and the needy in your land. God is saying, reach out your hands, not to receive, but to give of the little you have. There is no doubt about it by the statement, raise yourself by your, I can't even get the sentence correctly, or the intent of it. But you must, get yourself up from where you are by your bootstraps. You see my shoes here, I have, But yeah, they have lace. They have lace. But you have to have the boots. You have to have the boots first, right? If you don't have, we're going to use your lace to pull you up if you don't have any boots or any shoes. Yes, ma'am.
I know, well, this relates to what you're saying. I knew it was God.
Yeah.
And yesterday, I met this young man as I was going out from the little place we were eating at. Frank was still in there, and I was headed to the car, and he stopped me and he said, "Do you have any money for food?" I said, "Sure, let me see what I got here." I pulled it out and he said, "This should be enough to get you a nice meal." And he said, and this is what was so cute, "Would you like some marijuana?" That's all he had.
Yeah.
It was important to him.
Yeah.
And then I said, rather than to chide him, which I wouldn't, I said, "You know, I don't think I need that right now, no." And he says, "Well, can I rub your back?" Can you believe? I mean, think about all he had to give me back for money for free.
Yeah, exactly.
And I walked away and I says, "God, he was trying to give me all that he could just for meal."
Yeah, he was trying to pay you back.
Yeah, he really was.
Yeah.
And I looked at it that way immediately. You know, it's, you know how God deals with you. All of a sudden you go, "That was you."
Yeah. I'm going to, if I don't finish, but I will finish, but I'm going to read something for you. It is important. And I was so, it was so surprising because sometimes we don't see some of these things in the quarterly. Okay, here, yeah, go ahead. From
related to what Emily was saying over here. Carolyn and I were in a shopping center, and a young man, like where the cart's going, he was doing some weird things with some of the things he had.
Yeah.
And it was pretty obvious that he needed a little help.
Yeah.
So I went over and I happened to have it pointed out, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't let me go without giving me something in return. He gave me this thing here, which I still, it looked like $100 bill. And it is, but it's in foreign currency.
Yeah.
And I looked it up, it's about $2 or something.
Yeah.
Somewhere there. But he wanted to return something to me.
Yeah.
He didn't want to just take it and then say, "That's it." You know?
Yeah.
And so he gave me what he had.
Yeah. And that is,
I kept that. Never forgot.
amen. That is human dignity. We all want to have that respect of human dignity. Here is in one of the quarterly life applications. Here's a question. A drunk beggar asks you for some money because he says he is hungry and has not had a real meal in many days. How are you going to respond to his request? Having no guarantee that he will not use the money to buy alcohol? Disturbing, yes. Because if we have to wait until we know everything before we give, then that is why many do not give at all. We just have to give because the Spirit of God is in us, and the God is telling us. And as you rightly said, it is not fanatical. Someone might say, "Oh, God is speaking to you." Of course, God is impressing upon you, help this person. It said here we see clearly God's concern for basic humanity. Let's look at this one. Look at this one. It says, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a copper coin that doesn't worth anything? And not one of them falls to the ground apart from your Father's will? But the very hair of your head are numbered. Do not fear, therefore, you are of most value than what? Many sparrows. That's what God is saying. And I remember this, and I asked God, I remember, you know, I mean, when I went through difficulties, because sometimes we have to go through difficulties. So we can, when we reach where we are, God has to come back and remind us where we are coming from. And so that is so important. And I said, God, are you going to let me fail? And God did not. God, the God who takes note of a sparrow falls to the ground, in Matthew 10 and verse 29, knows all about the plight of those who are in the margin of society. In other words, the Lord is telling the people, okay, maybe you are a chosen, you are special. I love you, but I love others too, including the needy and the helpless among you. And just as I love you, you must love them as well. So God was saying to the Israelites, you are going into prosperity, but remember, you are taking the poor with you, and you're going to meet up on the poor also over there. And remember to take care of them. This is one of your obligations, and it is important one also. Why did God pay so much attention to how Israel treated the strangers? Why did God pay so much attention to that?
That's the way that we do our relationship with God.
Yes.
Jesus gives the parable of the servant.
Yes.
That servant was forgiven a lot, and turned around and didn't forgive the
Yes.
person that owed him less.
Yes.
And I think that it's, God has given us so many things,
Yes.
and for us to not share that with others impacts the way that we accept what God gives us.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a blessing that we miss out on if we don't help others. Or
Yeah.
said another way, there's a blessing we get when we help others, and it brings us a new understanding of God.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we all sitting here as professionals and others know what it was like when we pray and we cry before God. But God answers our prayers. There are many other tears that are being shed. And tears are shed also when somebody from somewhere help you that you did not even know who they are. You know, this had to be God working out his will in your life. Let me go down, and I guess one provoking question I'm going to get. It says he administered, that is meant, God administered justice for the fatherless and the widow, and loves the stranger, giving them food and clothing. So God gave them food and clothing through us, and will continue to do this. Okay, so here are Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 17 through 18. It says, why then God so loving the stranger so much? I like the picture where Jesus is bowing down, giving this homeless person some soup. That is so touching. It says, because God is God of gods and Lord of lords, because he is great and mighty and awesome, because he is not biased, and does not take what? Or accept what? Bribes. God, you don't have to pay him for anything, because he defends the fatherless and the widow, because he loves the stranger, giving them food and clothing. God is almighty. Still, he loves the strangers and helps them. He also invites us to love them also. Here are three texts. One that we just know, it is in bright, my favorite color, blue, bright blue. Can't miss it. Oh, here's the other one on the left. It says, for the poor will never cease to be in the land. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall freely open your hand to your brother to your need and the poor in your land. Open your hand of love and let something come across in your hand. Proverbs 3 and verse 27 says, do not withhold good from those to whom you should give it. If it is within your power to help, help. Help anyway, regardless of what people might say, regardless that you do not have all the answers. Why this person is homeless, why this person in such a desperate situation. You don't have to have all the answers, but you're going to help anyway. Yes.
You know, we are to walk in union with the Lord daily.
Yes.
And so doing that is proving our love.
Yes.
But do you remember when Jesus had said to the apostles, give to the stranger, feed the needy and the helpless. And no, he said it like this. What am I saying? He said, when you have fed me, you have fed the helpless. If you love me, I'm not saying it right, but you know what I'm.
Yeah.
Got it, you guys? Okay.
Yeah, you clothed me.
Yeah, when we have done as little to the poor.
You have done it to him.
him.
Yes.
And so we need to look at people as it's him.
Yes.
It's him, and he could be testing us, or he
Yeah.
could be saying, give to them.
Right.
Period.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
I'll tell you a story because we're not going to be able to finish everything. We pick it up next week. And next week, you can't miss this one. The next week is we're going to be dealing with justice and righteousness. But a lady, lady was praying hard, crying before God. And in her dream, she had a dream that God is coming to her house. And so the lady, God told her, and what it could be a Sabbath, God coming to her house. And then somebody knocked on the door. The lady came out. Who are you? Oh, I need some food. I'm hungry. I can't help you. I'm waiting because I have a special guest coming. I have a special guest coming. I can't help you. Oh, then, and she was there preparing and the best meal she can. And there was another knock on the door, a little girl came by, was, selling some cookies, and can you buy some cookies? No, I'm sorry, I don't eat cookies. I have to watch my sugar and all of those things. And no, I can't help you. Yeah, I just can't help you. Oh. And then there was another knock on the door after a while, but it was close to time, and said, oh, I'm so sorry. Why did you guys don't leave me alone? I'm so sorry. Because it was somebody from the fire department. They needed some donation and all of that. And then she waited and waited. The night came, her bedtime came. She went back to bed and she had a vision. God, where were you? Where were you? You said you would come. And God said, I came 3 times. 3 times. And you did not let me in. 3 times. Andrew, do that presentation for me.
God encouraged the people of Israel who were enslaved in Egypt to remember their own experience and to treat the stranger and the marginalized as full citizens.
Yeah.
They experienced what it was like to be stranger and marginalized firsthand. The law should be the same for natives and foreigners.
Yeah.
We are also slaves. We've been enslaved by sin. We are strangers on this earth.
Yes.
We must be a light that shows the love of God through the way we lovingly treat others.
Yes.
We are commissioned to treat others the way we wish to be treated if we were in their situation of plight. Therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. 7:12.
Yes. And it's for us to remember where God has placed us. But if you were in the plight of someone else, how would you want to be treated? Do you want to have a seat in church? You want to have a seat in church? The entire pew belongs to you. The entire pew. Nobody sitting next to you. You want to have that? Huh? No.
I was in a church where I would sit down and the person came up and he said, "You're sitting in my place."
Yes, yes,
And-
yes.
And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." So I got up and.
Yeah, yeah. I can tell you how to do it. Look at that picture. Become homeless. Become homeless. You didn't have a bath in 2 weeks. And what happened? You see that picture? You have the entire pew for yourself. What it is like. That is what the strangers are treated in many ways and neglected. And that is why they stand out. They stand out. He says, think about it. We can worship on the right day and understand the truth about death, hell, the mark of the beast, and so forth. All that is fine. But what does it all mean if we treat others nastily or oppress the weak among us, or did not minister justice fairly when we need to judge a situation? And I'm going to be ending here. I have what, 5 minutes remaining? I'm ending here. And it says all of that is fine. But what does it mean? It said, especially because of the truth that we have, why must we be extra careful not to think that way? Somehow, just knowing the truth in of itself is all that God requires of us. That is the wrong question. There is a potential danger in doing that. And I want to ask the question now and see if we can answer it. Why did Jesus, throughout the scriptures, is down here. All through the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Lord portrays an empathetic. That is what the word I should put there. An empathetic love and care for the poor and the vulnerable in society and in the church. Why? Throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, that passion of empathy. Why Jesus was so concerned about it?
Isn't that because that's who he is? That's his makeup. And that's what he wants his people to be. That's why when the question was asked before, why was he so concerned about Israel? Being this type of person, because that's who he went after. You represent me, and I want you to show what I am like. You are like you said before, my angel. You go around.
Yes.
That's what I get out of it.
That's true. And that is right. He said, I want to show you then that you do not keep only one side of the commandment, but to keep the other side of the commandment. But here's another one. Jesus was homeless. Birds have nests, foxes have holes, but the Son of Man had nowhere to lay his head. He was going from house to house, sleeping, the woman and others took care of him. He knew what rejection is like. He knew what insult was like. He was spat on. He knew all of that. So he knew the hurt and the tears. And God says, I am not going to remove the poor from the earth because they are here so you can show me what love is like. Because we are all from one genealogy tree. All of us from one genealogy tree. And that root rests in Jesus Christ. Because Ruth, right? And Boaz Ruth was a what? A stranger, right? And had to go out in the farm and pick up the leftovers. And from there, Boaz came, marry him. And Jesus came from the lineage of a stranger, from the lineage of a beggar, and from a poor.
I think that this study could go on for hours.
Oh, yes.
I have endless amounts of opinion about this that I would like to discuss, but I know that there's no time.